Liu Yuning stepped onto the Chengdu stage wearing a black leather jacket with long fringes, and within seconds, the entire venue went quiet. He didn't greet the crowd. The music hadn't started yet, but the atmosphere had already changed. Under dim lights and a thin layer of stage fog, his tall figure stood at the center, unmoving. No rush, no exaggerated gesture. He didn't announce himself. He allowed the silence to do that work for him. It didn't feel like the opening of a concert. It felt like the moment a main character enters the frame and everyone instinctively knows the story has begun. That pause lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough to anchor the room. Enough for the audience to understand that this night would not be driven by spectacle alone. It would be driven by the presence of the man standing in front of them. Liu Yuning stood with an ease that suggested familiarity, not arrogance. His shoulders were relaxed, his posture open. He didn't search for reactions. He didn't rush to claim attention. He let the lights settle on him gradually, let the crowd adjust to his pace, and in doing so, he quietly took control of the space. When his voice finally entered the room, it didn't burst forward. It arrived calmly, deep, steady, and grounded, as if it had been waiting for the right moment. From that first note, it became clear that everything on stage, the lighting, the sound design, the movement, existed to support one thing: his presence. He moved very little. A few measured steps across the stage, a pause, a slight turn of the body. Yet every movement felt intentional. The fringes of his jacket swayed gently with each step, catching the light and slowing the visual rhythm. Time seemed to stretch as if the stage itself had adjusted to him. His appearance was striking, but not overwhelming. This was not an image designed to shock or dazzle at first glance. It was the kind of presence that revealed itself gradually. His height allowed him to fill the stage naturally, but his gaze remained calm, introspective. When he lifted his head, shadows traced the line of his throat. When he looked down, the light softened, leaving only a quiet outline of his face. Nothing about it felt forced. Nothing felt rehearsed in the conventional sense. What the audience was watching wasn't a singer trying to prove his worth. It was a man who understood exactly where he stood and had no need to explain it. Liu Yuning didn't tell the audience who he was. He didn't frame the night with long introductions or personal speeches. He allowed them to feel it instead, through the way he occupied the stage, through the way he held silence, and through the way he began to sing. His voice didn't chase technical perfection. It stayed exactly where it needed to be. In slower passages, he allowed space between lines, letting silence become part of the music. In stronger moments, he held back just enough, keeping something in reserve, as if aware that the night still had a long distance to travel. At times, his eyes met the crowd directly. At others, his gaze drifted beyond the edge of the stage, distant and reflective. But it never felt performative. It felt like someone remembering, thinking, breathing through the moment rather than acting it out. That was what made his presence feel real. Not raw or exposed, but settled. The kind of authenticity that comes from having walked a long road and no longer needing to justify it. There was a quiet contrast within him. On the surface, strength, the tall frame, the dark leather, the grounded stance. Beneath it, something softer. A slight bow of the head before a demanding vocal line. A brief smile when the crowd's cheers lingered longer than expected. A short pause, barely noticeable, taken to steady himself before continuing. These moments didn't weaken his image. They strengthened it. They made it believable. The audience wasn't watching an untouchable figure placed on a pedestal. They were watching a person fully aware of himself, comfortable in his own rhythm. On a stage designed to overwhelm with light and sound, Liu Yuning remained the anchor, not by overpowering everything around him, but by never allowing anything to overpower him. As the concert moved forward, he didn't rush to build momentum. He allowed the night to unfold naturally. The music rose and fell, always centered around his voice. He stayed calm, letting the stage respond to him rather than the other way around. Then came a moment when the music softened and the lights dimmed further. Liu Yuning stood still at center stage, No words, no movement, just a slow, deliberate breath that seemed to ripple through the room. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of attention, anticipation, and quiet understanding. In that brief pause, it became clear why no one had looked away, why no one had reached for their phone, why no one felt the urge to move on. The audience wasn't waiting for a technical climax. They were following a person who was guiding the story at his own pace. When the band dropped out and he turned his back to the audience, singing a cappella into the vast space, the room fell completely silent. No effects, no distractions, just voice and breath filling the air. For those few moments, the scale of the venue disappeared. It felt intimate, exposed, and deeply focused. When the music returned, it didn't break the spell. It carried it forward. The emotional thread remained unbroken, flowing gently from one moment to the next. Between these controlled performances were moments of warmth. Liu Yuning paused to listen to the crowd, responded with a few quiet words, a small smile, a nod when he lifted a panda prop on the stage in Chengdu. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was simple, almost casual, and that was exactly why it worked. It softened the atmosphere, reminding everyone that beneath the presence stood a person. As the night continued, something became increasingly clear. The audience was no longer reacting randomly. They were adjusting themselves to him. They quieted when he slowed. They joined when the moment invited them to. The connection wasn't forced or demanded. It had been built over time. When the crowd's voices rose together, replacing the music for a moment, Liu Yuning didn't rush to reclaim the spotlight. He stood and listened. He allowed the sound to fill the space. In that exchange, the boundary between performer and audience blurred. This connection wasn't created in a single night. It was the result of shared time, shared listening, and mutual trust. That was why it felt natural. That was why it resonated without needing to be explained. As the concert approached its final moments, the energy in the room didn't spike. It settled. The kind of settling that comes after something has been fully expressed. The lights softened, the movements slowed, the atmosphere felt complete. When the final notes faded and the lights slowly came back on, Liu Yuning remained at center stage for a moment longer. He bowed, unhurried, as if closing a chapter rather than ending a show. The Chengdu concert didn't conclude with noise or spectacle. It ended with completion. Some stories don't need dramatic endings, they simply need to be told all the way through. And as the audience began to leave, what lingered wasn't just the sound of music, but the image of a man who stood his ground, guided an entire space with quiet confidence, and reminded everyone why they chose to stay, to listen, and to follow the story until the very end.